This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone. To everyone in the room, as well as those online, thank you for joining. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, September 24th, 2020 meeting of the Lake Forest Board of Education. As usual, we would like to begin by joining me with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Again, thanks for everyone that's joining in person and online. Just a reminder, the meeting will be recorded and will be posted on the district website as well as the meeting minutes in the future. We'll begin with roll call of board members. Mrs. McCloskey.
Here.
Mrs. Starkey.
Here.
Mr. Thomas.
Here.
Vice President Rao.
Here.
And President Earl Dempsey, serving as chair, is here as well. All 5 board members present. Thank you all for being here. We'll move on to starting with our agenda items with 2.4, approval of agenda. We have a motion on the floor properly seconded. Any questions or discussion on that motion? Hearing none, as we have been doing the last couple months, and I will try to remember through the evening, because of our partially remote meeting, we will conduct votes via roll call. We'll start with Mrs. McCloskey.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Rao.
Yes.
Mrs. Starkey. And chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0.
2.5. September 10th, 2020. Second.
That motion on the floor properly seconded. Any questions or discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Mrs. McCloskey.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Rao.
Yes.
Mrs. Starkey.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. We move on to item 2.7, citizens participation, an opportunity for the public to address the board. For anyone online, we had asked ahead of time to contact our district administration with the request to do not have any of those at this point. We do have 4 individuals who have signed up here in the room. I will call you individually, would ask you to come up near the front to address the board. And as a reminder, we do limit the comment for each speaker to 3 minutes. And Ms. Piccolo will time for us and give us those warnings. So we'll begin this evening with Ms. Mercedes Haller. Welcome back, Ms. Haller.
I just have a couple concerns, and I would like to see about getting some answers from. I understand school started on September 8th. I took some notes. September 8th, my kids, all 3 of my kids had no access to their website. September 9th and 10th, we didn't even get access until the night of Thursday in the evening. Still to this day, we're still having problems accessing things. We've emailed tech support, or you know what I mean, we've called, we've emailed, teachers are aware of that. But I'm getting calls now from the middle school and the high school telling me my kids are being marked absent and they're missing all their assignments. When I explain to them, the programs are not working correctly. We're not able to watch the YouTube videos that teachers are posting to help the kids at all. It says error 5. When we came in on Tuesday, that following Tuesday, my son got his computer finally from the high school, which we appreciate. But we got home and he wasn't even able to log on to it. They never wiped the previous student off of the computer, so we kept having errors that we couldn't even log in. So we are having issues with that. Again, teachers were calling that week saying, hey, you guys are absent, missing assignments. When I explained to them, hey, we didn't have access most of last week, all the teachers said were, well, we didn't know that that was even happening. Nobody told us that kids weren't having access. So I was getting kind of frustrated. I've already talked to the principal at the middle school about it. I've got 3 kids. All of my kids have been okay in school. My older 2 are great. They love school. My youngest one, ADHD, was all excited about this. And he has gone from excited to, Lord help us if we can even get him on a computer without having to babysit him at a computer because they're getting so frustrated with this stuff. So I'm just trying to find out teachers or the teachers that I'm here on the Zoom call. I'm becoming almost a second teacher, having to sit there with my kids, teaching them exactly where to click and everything. Is just getting frustrated, very frustrating. I did hear a teacher today get mad at the kids because they were trying to explain to her that they can't access it. The assignment is not there. And instead of pausing for a minute, it was more of, well, you guys don't want to listen to me, so we're going to make this assignment worth more points now, and now you guys have to do it on your own and do it tonight. And I think that, yes, teachers are getting frustrated. All of us parents are getting frustrated. So I'm just trying to find out if there's any updates on kids being able to be back in the school. How is that going to work? Because our 8th grader went from loving English or language arts to absolutely dreading it. And it's getting frustrating that these kids are, having all these problems, and all we're being told is, well, we're going to find out. We're going to see what we can do. We're going to see what we can do. And here we are getting ready to start the 3rd week of school, still having the same problems. I can access the YouTube videos on my computer, nowhere. So, but I appreciate it that you guys took time to listen. So, thank you guys.
Thank you. Ms. Haller, can I ask just for point of
Yeah.
reference? So you mentioned high school, Chipman, and
I have 2 at the middle school
2 at the
and
middle
1
school.
at the high school.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Appreciate the targeted feedback, and I know administration is taking it away as well. The common theme certainly with everyone is when and frustration, and we're all feeling it.
I get it from
We
you guys. I know you guys are frustrated. So
But
I
we
just wanted to
appreciate the
bring up some
targeted-
of things that we're having issues.
Appreciate the targeted specific feedback. Thank you. Move on our second speaker, Mr. Jeremy Selheimer from WT Chipman. Welcome, Mr. Selheimer.
So it's my hope that when my coaches and I speak, what we speak about tonight will not be seen as negative. I'm going to be speaking on concerns I have with the possibility of our district making decisions to start middle school sports this Monday with a focus on football. The recent 26-page DIFCA proposed football regulations for 2020 were put into place by high school coaches specifically for high school football. Having coached football for 18 years at Chipman, it's my strong belief that these regulations are not safe for middle school athletes, and this has nothing to do with COVID. I can confidently say that 50% of our kids have never participated in organized football prior to playing for Chipman. Limiting contact to 20 minutes a day, 1 to 2 times per week, no live contact for the first 2 weeks, will not work for first-year players or returners for that matter. We need to be taught the proper fundamentals to stay safe while playing football. My coaches and I will not put ourselves in a situation where we will be held responsible for one of our players getting seriously injured due to regulations that were not made for our level of football, but ones we are being made to follow. The majority of my middle school kids do not condition over the summer like some schools do with certain leagues of travel ball. Wearing a mask while preparing to play football for middle school kids, especially the bigger ones who have sat on the couch for the better part of the last 6.5 months, is not safe. Ruin the experience for many who will be playing football for the first time. The IFCA says football needs 4 weeks of practice before games. We are nowhere close to being able to start sports at Chipman this Monday, but we are looking at best starting football games on November 5th, which usually marks the end of our season, not to mention November 1st marks daylight savings, and it will be dark at 5:15 by the end of the first week of our game. Our practices cannot start earlier than 3:45 and games begin at 4. My last point about football is that the majority of our football kids come from low socioeconomic households and will no doubt struggle getting a ride to practice in a punctual manner, if at all. With where we are at in today's society, how is that not equitable across the board for our families and athletes in the Lake Forest School District? The answer is simple, it's not. The question might be then, how are other middle school coaches going to coach football? My honest answer would be they're going to abide by these regulations, put their athletes at risk, and pick up their paycheck. Chipman Middle School coaches, as well as our school administration, have received no guidance whatsoever over the summer or the month of September, for that matter, with regards to middle school ball sports possibly being played. I'm fortunate Brad Johnson set the football guidelines. I'm asking that our board members please see the bigger picture with regard to all sports and what it would entail to have fall sports at Chittenden. I do realize that some of our Chittenden athletes who are able to are currently participating in sports, whether it be travel ball or a league at Delaware Turf. While it may not seem fair, current restrictions and guidelines for travel ball and Delaware Turf are very different than the restrictions set forth by the DIAA for school sports. I know my time's about up. So the next person is going to kind of pick up.
Thank you, Mr. Selharner. We do appreciate you being here, appreciate the feedback. As mentioned, the introduction there, Mr. Jeremy Robinson, also from WT Chipman. Welcome, Mr. Robinson.
All right, thank you guys for allowing me to have this time. I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm a little nervous, so bear with me, okay? I'm also here to talk about fall middle school sports. My question to you guys is how and who is going to be implementing and supervising the regulations and guidelines that have been set forth for us to participate in the sports? Limiting and distancing spectators at home games when we don't have a fenced-in facility, staggering player report times as they arrive to practice every day, daily health screenings before all practices and games, locker room rotations, distancing for all athletes, supplying water bottles for those that cannot supply their own, keeping players in pods of 12 to 15 during practice, while many middle school coaching staffs of larger teams don't have that option. Sanitation of all equipment every day under the guidelines. So that means our students and our parents are going to be responsible taking care of their equipment. Sanitation of field equipment, travel accommodation for bigger teams, a site-specific plan has to be approved by the State Division of Public Health, which includes our gym, which many of us know is not a ventilated gym. These are just a few of the things that jumped off when we were reading the football guidelines. This list goes on. There's a much bigger, this is much bigger than saying let them play. Again, there was never any mention of fall middle school sports being played over the summer during the month of September by the DIAA. Everything was strictly about high schools, and now this is getting thrown on us last minute. On top of that, we currently have no athletic director, no field hockey coach, no soccer coach. Expecting our school administration to come up with a plan for all this right now is not fair during this time, because we're in the middle of virtual learning, which is going to turn into hybrid, which is going to need another plan. So failure to prepare is preparing to fail. In my opinion, we are not prepared to take this on at Chipman as coaches or administration during this time. I'm asking you guys one last time to think about the bigger picture and make the right decision for our athletes and our coaches and our school administration. It is unfortunate that we're asking to cancel fall sports and allow our school to focus on academics and preparing for the winter sports season. With that being said, this is not a decision that we've come to lightly. We've been coaching football at Chipman for over 15 years together. We love coaching football and developing relationships with our players. That is why we choose to do this. Right now, we miss coaching football, coming to school, looking forward to practice every day. We miss our boys. We miss the games. With that being said, it just doesn't make sense to do fall sports right now in middle school. It's very difficult for us to implement the guidelines, but it's also putting our players in jeopardy for their health and their safety. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Appreciate the feedback. And for both of you as staff members at Chipman, thank you for all that you're doing from a learning perspective as well. Our fourth and final speaker this evening is Miss Crystal Silver. Welcome, Miss Silver.
I have two things.
Could you please come up front, largely because the speaker is up there. Thank you.
I want to chime in about fall sports, but I also want to chime in about the high school schedule that is driving me crazy in this building. As a parent with children in this district, I don't work here. I work in a district where the kids are back in the building, and it is phenomenal. It's been a blessing. They're spaced out. We have less than 10 kids in every room, and it's going phenomenal. But I'm here because to me, this is the best place academically for my kids, and that's why I keep it. It's not the best place academically right now, but I want to real quick chime in on the fall sports because I got an email yesterday about fall sports starting Monday, and my child having to be at a football meeting out here, but it depended on the board decision tonight. However, if it really depended on the board decision tonight, why did they get football equipment today on the football field? Furious was I, furious. It is not fair that you are out there worried about sports right now when you're not meeting any child's needs in this school academically. You're not. And until they're in a hybrid face-to-face situation, getting the instruction that they need, that comes second. And I'm a sports mom. I can play travel ball. I get it. I want them out on the field. But when it comes to school, academics come first in my household. And if you agree with that happening out there, you're flipping it around. And that shouldn't happen. And the deal with equitable, the kids that are here that don't have internet are going to be able to stay. They're here all day, they get transportation here, and they're play sports. But me, I'm going to work it, paying for my internet. I can't supposed to get my kid here at 4 o'clock for practice. And I know I'm not the only parent like that. That's not fair to put on me. My kids have been so upset all night, and I'm being able to get them here for it. It's not right. You need to think about all the children and how you are doing them all equal. You can't service the ones that are here in this building and allow them to play sports when others don't have rides and transportation. It's not right. I'm probably getting right out of time, but the high school schedule is absolutely insane. The small group time is a complete wasted time of instruction that our children are not getting. They're doing nothing during that small group time unless they're in an AP class. Then in the afternoon, they have all their classes, and then they have all the homework that's due by midnight that night. So then the next morning, they have nothing to do. If you flip the schedule, they had their classes in the morning, they could use the small group time to do their work instead of being up until 10 o'clock at night. I don't know who thought of that situation at the high school, but it is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Thank you, Ms. Silver. Appreciate the feedback on the schedule, the academics, as well as the sports. As always, thank you for coming. Okay, that's all we have this evening as far as citizens' participation. Again, thank you for those 4 individuals coming out and addressing the board. We do appreciate the candid feedback always. We move on to section 3, reports. Board President report. I don't have much of a report this evening. We do have some continued big topics tonight to talk about. We will be discussing and hearing from administration regarding return to school and our plan as well. Fall sports, since we met last, the State Board of Education affirmed the DIAA's about face on fall sports, a narrow vote 4-3. And now I will say, I will categorize it as, unfortunately, these types of positions are now put back on the local school boards, are put back on the local district administration. And we are saddled with making these decisions now last minute. Personally, I will say publicly that I was extremely frustrated and let down as a board member, as a parent, to where we have a direction that is chosen by a governing board in August unanimously, and then 1 month later it's completely reversed almost unanimously, and then sent to the same approving board who also reverses their decision, and now it's up to us. And as I've said before, this board, this administration, this district, we are committed to making these tough decisions when they are put before us, and we will do so with as much of a balance as we possibly can, taking into account the consideration for everyone. But I can tell you that none of us really appreciate the position that we've been put in and are having to deal with tonight. And that's me as an individual board member, may not be representative of everyone up here, but it is a very frustrating, I believe Ms. Haller used the word frustrating. Frustration, and that abounds. We get it. We're very keen to that, and we continue to appreciate as much of everyone's support and as much as everyone's patience as we can possibly have as we all work through this together. We are continue to be saddled as a district and as a board with having to make decisions within a box that's painted for us by our state government. So appreciate everyone hear your support and your patience. That's all that I have. Any questions for me? All right, we'll move on to Superintendent Report, Dr. Lucas.
Good evening, President Dempsey, members of the board, community. Today is the 12th day of school, and you know, I would like to sit up here and say everything's going great, and you know, we're moving in the right direction, and that would generally be true. We sent out some surveys this week, and our responses to how the families and how the children are responding to the remote learning is good. But we do know that remote learning in and of itself is not great for everybody. It's not accessible by everybody, and it's certainly not the environment that we want to be in right now. With that said, our teachers are doing an exceptional job. They've crafted excellent instruction. I sit through Zooms every day. I'm in every classroom every week, and I see a lot of teaching and learning going on. But we do recognize that we've got technology issues, we've got some access issues, and we are working exceptionally hard to try to reach every student. And I know principals, they don't have a crystal ball, but they are working really hard, scrambling to try to reach out to those families. And definitely tonight, you know, just reminds us of how hard we have to try to find every family that's not being served to the best of our ability right now. We surveyed the staff as well this week, and you know, we're putting their feedback together because we want to use what they tell us as well to try to make sure that we're meeting their needs, we're providing them the support they need. We've issued 33 more laptops. We've got about 140 more in the queue that are getting, you know, whatever they do, re-image them and get them out. So as soon as we can turn these things around, as soon as we get them in, we're trying to get them out. I just ask again, like Mr. Dempsey said, be patient. We have to stick to the plan. Work with your building principals to make sure that your needs are being met. And principals will be sure, I've seen them responding well to the community. I'll touch more on our return to school plan because I know everybody's anxious to that a little bit later in the meeting, as well as athletics. I will definitely speak about what I know about our return to athletics. A couple reminders though, real quick. October 6th, coming up quickly is our interim reporting period. Interim reports will be available on our home access center. Parents who don't have their home access center can reach out to their home schools, or they can receive paper copies if they prefer. I'll follow up with a community message as well to make sure everybody's aware of that. Finally, everybody should have received a message about food distribution. We're distributing meals for every Lake student. They can be picked up a week's worth of meals every Thursday at South, East, and North elementary schools between 3:45 and 6 p.m. And that's all I've got for Superintendent's report.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lucas. Questions for Dr. Lucas? All right, thank you again, sir. We'll move on to 3.4 LFEA report. Mrs. Barb Mills is in the house. Welcome.
I started out thinking tonight I didn't really have a report, and sitting there, I have several things now. So I'm going to start out by just letting everyone know that Carol Stark from our high school was able to be a part of a candidate interview sponsored by the SEA. She was able to be a part of that. The SEA continues to host various professional development for our members at no charge. And I wanted to recognize that Jess Hurst from the high school has led some of these professional development opportunities. So we appreciate them as well. Our election of officers and reps is final now, and we sent out the new list to staff, administrators, and the board last week. And then I'll just end with saying with 3 weeks left of our first 6 weeks, I know that teachers, paras, and other staff are very concerned about what October 19th and beyond looks like. And we realize that there, you know, something will be happening, but we hope that we get that information sooner than later, because there is a lot of preparation that goes into that. And like Dr. Lucas mentioned, the teachers are working really hard to provide this good instruction, and no matter what format they use, they need to have time to plan for that. So I appreciate sooner than later.
Thank you, Ms. Mills. Questions for Mrs. Mills? I just had one minor thing. When you mentioned Carol or Mrs. Stark
Yes.
participating in a candidate interview?
Yes.
What does that mean? What is that?
The candidates for representative legislators.
Oh, okay.
In Kent County
Okay, great.
for
Got it.
election.
Thank you. All right, we are on to section 4, unfinished business. Board policy second reading. This is an action item, Mr. Brown.
Motion to approve resolution 0.1 as modified. Second.
A motion on the floor properly seconded. Believe we should look at this policy to see if there's any discussion on it. This is JEA. This is our new supplemental student attendance policy for states of emergency. For refresher, this was the one that came to us first reading. We had some questions due to the timing when this has to be turned into the state. We had agreed to ask the committee and administration to make some of those modifications while bringing it back for second reading tonight so we can make that. I believe everybody received a printed copy tonight. The difference from the printed copy you have versus what was posted online is that the changes or additions since first reading are substantively, they were all the same. It's all the same as what was posted for us. So discussion on JEA. Mrs. Stark.
Just for clarification on numbers 1 through 8, it was evidence. Am I correct in saying if any of those things are happening, it's not marked absent? Is that correct?
Well, to be in compliance with the state of emergency, it has to be a combination of any of those events. So yes, any of those 8 events happening in concert would represent evidence of attendance. Yes, ma'am.
I do feel like that's one thing I've heard a lot of, is that kids are being marked absent for not being in. Like from my angle, that is a marker of attendance. I don't know. Check on, clarify the buildings. I'm not sure.
We can definitely do that. And we can make any corrections as well. So if we come across any errors in attendance, we can certainly correct those.
And I will say that from a personal situation that has happened, as soon as I email and say, clarify, I think that has been taken care of, but just save the hassle of having to do that.
All right. Any further discussion?
So
Mr. Al?
one issue I had that they're now getting very broad, lead into specific now. So this is going to be a temporary policy that's specific to COVID-19. Making sure the title be in concert with that COVID-19 reference.
Can I comment on that?
Absolutely.
So the lead verbiage there, that was verbiage that was provided for us from an attorney that represents the Superintendent's Association, and that's verbiage that should be included virtually in every school district's attendance policy to meet compliance with the state. And if you notice at the end of paragraph 1, it says, which shall expire without further action on the date of the recession or modification of the order. That refers to the state of emergency. So the good news is we won't have to come back into board and rescind this.
That's fine. I'm okay with that. However, if that's what we're going to do, we try to be consistent with our policies. This policy is specific to one item. We shouldn't have a broad topic. The actual name.
So should we change it to for state of emergency due to COVID? Something like that, due to COVID-19.
I just think, especially if it's going to go away, because if it is going to go away, the heading sounds as though it's something that's going to stay for any type of state of emergency, whether it be, school closing because the governor issues a state of emergency, or as or hurricane, whatever.
Got it.
So your explanation explained where the word exigencies came from. I felt a little less smart looking at that, having
I had to
looked
look
at that
it
word,
up.
but if it was written by an attorney, that explains it.
Usually I think that's what people
That is a word. That is a word. Learn something new every day. Any additional discussion or comments on this policy? All right. Hearing none, we'll move to the roll call vote to accept the policy with the change to the heading discussed. We'll start with Mrs. McCloskey, Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Rao,
Yes.
Mrs. Starkey,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all. Section 5, discussion items, 5.1, 2020 to 2021, return to school. Update from Dr. Lucas.
Well, good news is we're still on track to return October 19th. The state's return to school criteria has remained generally unchanged. We're still at level 2, which means we can continue into the hybrid model. The good news is we did see some steady declines in our rolling average positive tests in both Kent County and the Lake Forest school area. So we are still on track to bring in our pre-K to 1, 4, 6, and 9, plus our current students receiving face-to-face support. We've received several inquiries about what exactly instruction is going to look like when students return on October 19th, and I can't exactly describe what that's going to be right now, although I will be able to paint a much clearer picture when we meet again on October 8th. All that said, we know we do not want to bring back whole grades of students and sit them in front of computers all day in the classroom. So our goal is to shift our ratio of remote learning to a true hybrid model where students who are in the classroom are receiving much more direct instruction and hands-on opportunities as much as healthy, opportunities will allow. We hope to continue to shift that ratio as we move on and bring more students into the classroom, less reliance on the remote learning and an additional reliance on more of a hybrid type learning. Let's see, we have been working on this since the onset of school, and we've arranged for some deep planning sessions, which will start Tuesday. We've invited LFEA, and they're going to participate in that with us. And we're going to help to make that transition a reality. We know this is hard on everyone, students, teachers, families, but we intend to continue to make things better without increasing people's stress level. And until we have something strong educators, but we have some strong educators working behind the scenes to make this work. I do want to close this portion of my remarks by saying, there's a lot of variables that have to change before we're able to abandon remote learning. I mean, that's just reality. We know that while we've learned many new ways to implement technology, and many of those are here to stay, remote learning alone is not the best platform. We know that, we agree with it for the preponderance of students, and we need to return to the classroom. We're in favor of that, we're working hard, we're on schedule to do that, and but we still have to remain safety as our focus of effort under all circumstances.
Thank you. Questions for Dr. Lucas or discussion? Mr. Rapp.
As we go through this, are the chiefs having collaboration? I assume they are, right? Sure. You guys are discussing with other superintendents, what's working for them, everything they're seeing, sort of like, because not every school is turning the same pace. So are those types of discussions ongoing?
Yes, sir. Meet with the chiefs regularly. Nearly every day I speak with one superintendent or another. We meet with representative from the governor's staff or the governor himself at least once a month or every other week. And so, yeah, there's a lot of collaboration going on. Unfortunately, each district has its own set of circumstances. And when we get into athletics, we'll talk about that because some of the bigger districts, they have some resources that we just don't have. And so that's why I think, the state is sort of pushing these decisions down to districts because the districts are so different that, but we are collaborating on what's working and getting ideas from each other.
Just a follow-up question, I won't, but heard mentioned to us that like the seat accelerator or can accelerate all reality. If we can do it, it needs to. Not in light of just the comments for tonight, but everyone sitting up here, I think, has heard from someone who are experiencing the same difficulties on their own as a So obviously, the next big focus is going to be in October, bring back. Having said that, if that does go well, is that the goal then to try to have some acceleration? Just trying to give a ray of hope to the parents that are not a K-1, 6 or 9, that have their kids that are still going to be home the entire time.
We fully intend on bringing as many students back as quickly as possible, as long as conditions remain safe. So that's why we didn't put any dates on when, for example, the next move will be to bring kids back, because we feel like when I come in here on October 22nd, if I can report some really good things, maybe we can decide on putting some dates in place to enter into a next phase.
And I'm glad we did as well. However, I do know that there have been some misconceptions in the community that those phase words are actually working. And I've had comments to me that, why is my child not going back to school? I told them that's all, I calmed them down, but I just want to make, I wanted to have some brief discussion on that so that there is an understanding out there that those, number one, those phases aren't necessarily working, but also two, as we can say.
Yeah, because phase 5 would then never occur. We didn't get everything.
That's what I know.
So no, yeah, we're all on board with that, Mr. Rao. We want to get kids back as quickly as we can.
Other discussion, Mrs. McCloskey.
With the return to plan of the AD.
Yeah, we'll probably, until restrictions are lifted, that 3-foot with the mask restriction is lifted, we still can only put 23 students on a bus. So unfortunately, until we can handle that transportation issue, tackle that problem, we're probably going to get to our max where we're about 50%. When we get 50% full, everybody's coming, it's going to be tough for us to exceed that. Transportation is going to limit us.
So,
Yes, Mr. Rao.
so with the surveys that are going to go out, is that a question that would be there? Are you by transportation?
We've been checking along the way, and we are getting a lot of parents that are driving their kids and dropping their kids off. Again, I don't know that it's enough to impact it to move the needle. 23 is not a lot. And that we only have, we're really limited on busing, as you guys know.
So, but I guess that would be evaluated and class size would be evaluated that if it is possible that we are able, I know that might be a touch now, kids that are in school now that are at 6 weeks, why are we still requiring them now 6 weeks non-mask?
Sure. Well, they're indoors. So the DPH guidance is if they're indoors, they should still need masks. And so we're just erring on the side of caution. That's why we went to 6 weeks, to err on the side of caution. But we realize as we get bigger classes, that's not going to be possible in some spaces.
And is there going to be a plan for, I know that they're working on it, may not be, but there have been concerns from parents of going to go into the classroom and I'm glad we addressed that. And but scheduling these masks is a big part of the equation. Is how often does that seem to be that part of the guidance from Delaware Public Health? Because if they're guiding everything else, that is big too. Some people don't want their kids wearing masks all day long without an appropriate time down on. So I just wondered.
There's no guidance from DPH on mask breaks. In fact, they discouraged us from making it a part of our practice, but we think it is healthy and we take the kids outside. And I think it's just going to be a matter of, economy, how much we can do and as often as the need arises. Again, I think we give the guidance. The teachers have been exceptional. The schools in terms of really recognizing the safety standards have been outstanding. They're wiping things. I mean, I can't imagine that you can go somewhere safer than one of our schools right now. And that's the way we.
And I agree with that. I've had people reach out to me that have said the accommodations are almost to extreme in the point of at the hospital, they're not even wiping down things anymore. They're not wiping down high traffic areas in the hospital.
So it's like, but at school, we're still required, it just seems kind of like it's not, like everything else, it's so contradictory. And there's rules for rules of these people, but not these people, and it just, and that's part of the frustration that it's on.
I agree.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Yes, Mrs. Starkey.
You mentioned that you have surveyed teachers or staff. Can you share a little bit about what feedback you're getting from them?
I wish I could. I'm just not prepared, Ms. Starkey, so I don't want to misspeak.
Is that something maybe we could hear next time, next board
Absolutely.
meeting?
Yes, October 8th, I can definitely bring those results.
Okay, fantastic. All right, thank you. Anything further? So just want to clarify and ask, so, we basically what we did as a district, the path we chose with 6 weeks of virtual, we were somewhat on par with, I believe, 15 out of the 19 districts statewide. And a lot of them did target 6 weeks in planning. And from what I've been seeing, pretty much everyone is faced with the same decision, and most of them are still moving ahead. It doesn't seem like anyone has decided that virtual is the right path to go. It seems that everybody is trying to move to get students back, at least in a hybrid format, sooner rather than later. Have you heard anything different?
I have not. As far as I know, everybody is moving forward.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So that closes out 5.1. We'll move on to 5.2, please. Fall sports season for 2020-2021 school. Dr. Lucas. Yes, you again.
So as everyone knows, as we've discussed, to many of our angst, the State Board of Education approved the Delaware Interscholastic Athletic, the DIAA, their emergency regulation 1010 was amended to approve the return to sports on September 28th. They suggested fall sports would have a 3-week preseason, football would have a 25-day preseason beginning on September 28th. I'll just speak kind of off the cuff. I'm as conflicted as everybody, okay? And personally was this just came out of nowhere. Superintendents were in favor of sports beginning in December. The DIAA came out and made this decision. It was approved by the state, and now everybody is moving forward at warp speed to start practice on Monday. I can't begin to explain the additional burden this puts on the administrators, the coaches, of course, athletic directors, our support staff, to try to pull all this together. As was mentioned, we had to submit a plan to the Department of Public Health, and because they're getting inundated with so many plans, they're probably not going to have that plan returned to us approved by the first day of practice. So we've got to make additional arrangements to ensure that we're still following existing guidelines. Long story short, it's created some difficulties, and I echo the sentiment that this was taken with a high sense of urgency that seems to exceed the sense of urgency that they took academics. Nevertheless, my recommendation is that we abide by the state approval to return to sports at the JV and varsity high school levels, not at the middle school level. And the coaches mentioned many of the reasons why it's not a good idea for us to go into sports at the middle school level. They mentioned the darkness, they mentioned the transportation, they mentioned the controls on the fields. Those are all very difficult. The coaches, who are certainly the experts in their field, and as far as football, I certainly wouldn't contradict anything they said in terms of the safety factor. So I think those are all good reasons why I'm against us going back to middle school sports. I am in favor of varsity and JV sports. If anything, I look at it as an opportunity, another opportunity for us to collect the sort of data that we can use to accelerate our pace of getting children back in school. And I know that we can do this. I know that Coach Johnson has been working hard on his plans, along with a number of other people here in the room, to make sure we do this safely and in accordance with state standards. And so my recommendation is that we return to sports at the high school, JV and varsity level, and not at the middle school level per the DIAA recommendations.
All right, if I may ask one thing, go back to a comment that was made by definitely Mr. Selheimer and I believe Mr. Robinson as well, is that, the middle school has never even come on the radar or been discussed or brought up by the DIAA, and I don't remember having seen it or heard it either. Has there been any specific guidance or mention by them, or is it just all lumped together and the assumption that we're just strictly talking about high school and whatever filters down?
I have not heard or read middle school differentiated from high school. It's just been, interscholastic sports, I think, has been the term that's been used. And that's all I've seen.
Questions, discussions from the board for Dr. Lewis. Mr. Rapp.
So I will echo sentiments earlier. The frustration that I have, and this has been picked down, it's the level for us to make it impact our district when we continually get mandates from legislators in Dover to do things, and everybody probably won't do it. However, things like this that are such an important decision, given a fraction of time left in our system that we call authority, it's just extremely frustrating. This board in our district has put in a no-win situation. There are going to be parents, regardless of what we decide tonight, that are going to be happy with the decision. There are parents that are not happy. And it's just extremely frustrating. And once again, having said that, I did read through the plan by the State Board of Education. One thing I did not get was our DPH plan that was submitted. That is a problem for me because I'm going to vote on something tonight without having access or having any knowledge whatsoever of the plan we're about to. And that's concerning. And that's no knock at our district or administration. This is all for us to get to the last minute. So there's a little bit of a difficulty to be able to vote tonight, not even having had a chance to review our plan. Having said that, some of the questions I have kind of echo Mr. Selheimer's questions and Mr. Robinson's questions. Who actually is the person that's doing all these things for us? Taking temperatures at every different field for all the athletes as they go out there every day, taking roll, all these different things, these balls. In the plan, is that person or people are we prepared to even implement this plan? I played high school sports, I played middle school. It breaks my heart that our kids are not going to have, that missed out on the end of the season last year and are going to not, doesn't sound like middle school, have that opportunity, especially right now. I want to give these kids everything we can because they're just being robbed of so much because of what we do. Having said that, we need to do it in a safe way. That will be my first question. Can you give us some insight as to the plan itself?
Absolutely. And let me respond first to the DPH plan. As I said, the DPH gave us a turnaround of 10 to 14 days from the time that we submitted it, and that it would be, they would be reviewed on a, what's the word? We had to get in line. So it was really urgent that we got that thing submitted. We did have a checklist. The short of it is we can't go back to playing sports anyways unless DPH approves the plan that we put in place. Mr. Johnson's here. I don't know if he minds coming forward and sharing some of the details of who's going to do what. All the things, though, that Coach Selheimer and you have mentioned are in our plan, and certainly we're going to address those. Maybe, Coach Johnson, you mind coming up and sharing with us how we're going to do all this?
Good evening, Mr. Johnson. Welcome.
So earlier this summer, Governor and DIAA allowed us to start summer conditioning. So here at Lake Forest, we started summer conditioning on July 28th, and under different regulations. So how we do it here. So our coaches, all of our kids have Google Doc, a link. So before they even enter the plan area, they answer 4 questions regarding COVID-19. And we also take everyone's temperature, all the coaches and players that are working out. We take everyone's temperature. They upload that to that link, that Google Doc. I have access. Mr. Mormon has access. School nurse has access. And our coaches know that anyone that answers yes to any of this question, they have to leave immediately. They can't return until they go to the doctor and make sure they're not positive of COVID. And I know what we do for football. When we were allowed to work out all of our sports, the requirement of wearing masks wasn't only during breaks and checking in. We were supposed to wear a mask. So it changes all the time. So it recently changed that we have to wear a mask during workouts now. So before that change, we've been working out for about a month now, and football's been working out, volleyball just started a couple weeks ago. Our hockey team's been working out, soccer team's been working out, and we haven't had any incident. And I know coaches, I'll talk to them about what they should be doing, making sure they try to make sure the kids maintain social distance. I know for football, we're one of the few that has equipment that the kids have to touch. So when we take breaks, we have pumps that we disinfect footballs, and we encourage the kids to use hand sanitizer. They're taking breaks on the sideline, and it's been tough to stress social distancing because kids want to talk to each other, or someone makes a catch, they want to high five. So we just continue to preach on that, social distancing, things like that. And as far as DPH, we did submit a plan, DPH, and it was a rush to get that plan in because we know it's like waiting in line. We'll get to. And the plan we had to submit to DPH is pretty much once we start having games, what that's going to look like. Like, how are we going to arrange for the seat? And then when we have inside activities, we had to submit that plan with that's going to look like. So we really didn't have to submit a plan as far as outside practice. Like, we didn't have to submit that. The plan that we had to submit was what outside games and inside games and stuff going to look like. How are you? They had several questions about, sanitizing, disinfecting, like the areas, ventilation inside, temperature checks, questionnaire. So we had a couple of plans for those things.
So essentially, the one question I have as far as things that are required in the document, that's going to come with.
Well, so actually,
temperature check. I know the question is going to be, is there someone checking to make sure for people that player is filling that out?
right. So what we do is we have kids do it like regular, like open up your Google Doc, put your name in, and from what I understand, all of our coaches have the same thing. So you're here, open up your Google Doc, put your name in. As you come through, check your temperature, put that in, push submit. So we have a trainer, athletic trainer, going to start with us on Monday. So she's going to, and we have a school nurse, and I talked to our school nurse today. So when our athletic trainer comes in on Monday, myself, the athletic trainer, and school nurse, are going to sit down and meet, talk about like what we need to do as far as practice. Because right now, we didn't have a trainer. Our school nurse has been our school nurse, so it's been up to the coaches to make sure kids have completed the questionnaires and completed the temperature check, submitted all their information. That's been up to the coaches. But now that we have a trainer starting on Monday, so she's going to help take over some of that responsibility and also help guide us because we're coaches and teachers. So our athletic trainer and our school nurse, we're going to rely more on them to further guide us as we get everything back in place if we get everything back. Or starting district efficiency.
then it will start practicing. So we're practicing right now, allowed to practice. Yes, that we were allowed to practice as of July the 28th. We were allowed to start that practice. So once governor gave the okay, and DIW gave the okay, and we waited a couple weeks, then Dr. Lucas gave us the okay. We could start working out.
And it's to that point, it sounds like that DPH plan is more about spectators and events more than it is about the practices.
Correct.
So so I think to your point is we can start officially the season with practice on Monday.
Right.
Without that plan having been approved.
Right.
But it would sound like before we start any games 3 weeks from now, or from
They're
now.
allowing fans or spectators or playing against another team, actual competition that playing is.
If I could jump in, Coach. So the original okay was for conditioning, like conditioning and skills. We weren't like able to get out and do any contact stuff or any hitting or anything like that. It was just conditioning and skills. We got the okay to do that. And everything that we're doing is still in accordance with all the DPH guidelines and all of the state of emergency guidelines. So even though the kids are coming in and doing the workouts, they're still maintaining the social distancing. I saw the soccer team out there with their masks on the other day. So everybody is well aware that even though we have been okay to come out and run around and, do push-ups and sit-ups or whatever, that all those other rules still apply. They're not out the window. The DPH plan is specifically for facilities. How are we going to navigate? Where are we going to set up our hand sanitizing stations? Are we going to have one for every 15 participants? And we've checked all those blocks in our plan. Mr. Weller's our rep. He's our COVID rep for the district. He was in on that. Nurse-wise, we have a DPH rep, Ms. Kathleen Russell, and everybody's been a part of the development of that plan to make sure it's going to be adequate.
So since July 28th, have you got any major issues with training or anything like that? No, we haven't had any issues. No, last night our hockey team and cheerleading team practiced. I went online and submitted their Google Doc questions and see if anybody said yes to anything, and I looked at temperatures. We had probably over 1,000 different responses from the time we started. So far, everything's been pretty good. You don't see any major issues or anything? No, I don't see any major issues moving forward with high school. Like, some of the concerns that were already addressed earlier, some of the same that I had as far as some kids being able to get to practice. And we even talked about ideas to maybe help out in that situation. We didn't mention and talk about ideas with that, but that's my concern with high school, how the kids be able to get to practice. That's pretty much the concern of high school.
I want to thank you too, because I think I know you were questioning Jamie the DPH stuff. Well, to me, it's frustrating because DPH is all over the place because we've been playing sports all summer. We've been playing baseball all summer. We've been playing flag football all summer, but everybody was touching the ball. I mean, it's very hard that somehow it comes back to the schools to be the ones that have to be overly cautious, but yet all around we have it going on. So just I commend you all for doing everything, the hard work to put in to make it happen. And I know that we wouldn't go give anything less than that. I feel like all of our coaches give whatever needs to be done the right to do that. So I thank you for that. But my one question is the same one you kind of addressed. But there is something, are you guys thinking about that? Making sure to get aren't able to get there with a parent. Is that something you're guys somehow looking forward or looking into going forward?
We did talk about it. Depending on what the decision is tonight, then our administration team at high school and transportation, of course, and financial advisor, we will sit down and talk about it more this week. But we did mention transportation piece regarding students not being able to have rides. That was mentioned.
Mrs. Starkey.
Would that be your main transportation? Anything else?
Well, for high school, yeah, that would be the main, making sure that all of the kids will have the opportunity. Just like for me and most of all of you, it wouldn't be an issue getting our kids right. But already I'm thinking about on Monday when we start, how am I going to get such and such practice? And I know his mother doesn't get home, and he has a little brother at home that he has to watch until his mother gets home. So like I coach a sport where we get a lot of kids from social and economic fast. I coach a lot of those kids. So that's one of the major concerns. How are we going to get those kids? If they want to play soccer, do a lot of volleyball, how are they going to get the practice? That's one of my major concerns. But our coaches have been out, voting. It's called informal instruction. So out of season coaching. So it's not practice, but they have allowed us to use football where before we weren't allowed to. So our coaches have been doing it already, and a lot of high school kids have been, coming out and practicing, trying to maintain social distance, things like that. The mask effect is new to us because we didn't have to wear a mask earlier, but that was just implemented a week or two. So that's new. Our coaches and our kids, have been doing this in profession for about a month.
Additional questions or discussion at this point from the board? So this item thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Freddie. So this item does come back up later in the agenda. We will be looking for a vote from the board. At that time, we will have opportunity for any last minute discussion. All right, Mr. Rao, we move on to section 9.
Section 9, personnel resolution. Resolution 9.19. Second.
Have motion on the floor properly seconded. Any questions or discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Mrs. McCloskey?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes.
Mrs. Starkey?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Section 10, personnel, offers of employment. Resolution 10.1 as written. Second.
Have motion on the floor properly seconded. Any questions or discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Mrs. McCloskey?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes.
Mrs. Starkey?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Section 11, personnel hires and motion. Resolution 11.1, 11.9. Second.
Have motion on the floor properly seconded. Any questions or discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Roll call vote. Mrs. McCloskey?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes.
Mrs. Starkey?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Section 18, personnel transfers. I think resolutions 18.1 and 18.2. Second.
Have motion on the floor properly seconded. Any questions or discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Mrs. McCloskey?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes.
Mrs. Starkey?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Section 19, personnel appointments. I make a motion to approve resolution 9.1, 19. 6. Second.
Have a motion on the floor properly seconded. Any questions or discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Mrs. McCloskey?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes.
Mrs. Starkey?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Section 20, other business. I make a motion to approve resolutions 21, 22. Second.
Is there any, we have a motion on the floor properly seconded. Any questions or discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Mrs. McCloskey?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes.
Mrs. Starkey?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Continuing with other business, item 20.3, fall sports 2021. Make a motion to approve resolution 3 as written. Second.
Have a motion on the floor properly seconded. Any questions or discussion on that motion? Mr. Rao?
During discussion, but I don't know whether or not.
Yes, so I believe, so this motion, the way the motion's
To
written,
approve the recommendation of our.
this motion doesn't really state that, but I believe what our motion should be, or what we should be voting on, would be to adopt our superintendent and administration's recommendation within the DIAA emergency regulation, which would be for high school varsity and junior varsity, and not at middle school at this, not for middle school at this time. So pleasure of the board as to whether we revise that motion as such, or if we are all good with that discussion. Okay, any further questions or discussion on this topic and the superintendent's recommendation? All right, hearing none, we shall move to a roll call vote. Mrs. McCloskey?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Abstain.
Mrs. Starkey? And chair votes yes. Motion carries 4-0 with one abstention.
Section 24, order points. First.
Nope. Yeah, we are done with our action items. So thank you, Mr. Rao. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. We are down to, as Mr. Rao said, section 24, item 24.1, good of the order. This opportunity for board members to bring forward any topics or comments that not otherwise covered in the agenda. Mrs. Starkey.
I just wanted, last meeting, and have policy council pick that off. That's October, but the virtual parent orientation 7, followed by the first meeting of the year. It'll be every third Thursday of
So I'm sorry again, what was that date?
October 15th is the virtual orientation 7, followed.
Great. Thank you very much, Mrs. Starkey. Anything additional from the board? Ms. McCloskey?
I do want to say thank you to the teachers, the coaches, the administrators. I know from my own home with my 3 kids, the extra work is not easier by any means to be doing everything this way. But I will have to say, in my own, speaking from my own personal experience, from week 1 to week 3, we have grown. The kids have grown, the teachers have grown. It is not ideal. It's not what we want to be. But I'm just very thankful for our Lake Forest community, especially our teachers, for giving the effort and starting. It's work. It's work for them beyond their expectation of their work.
So I would piggyback off of that and echo that as well. From this vantage point, it appears that collaboration between our administration and our teachers, and the effort that the teachers are putting in, while no matter what vantage point you look at it from, it's not ideal. Thanks to everyone on the front lines for all the work that's being done. You are our true heroes of the day. So please keep it up. Try not to get frustrated, and we'll live to see another day. Anyone else?
I should piggyback
Mr.
on
Thomas.
that also. Thank everyone for everything they're doing. Thank you, parents, for being patient with us. I think someone said it earlier, no matter what decision we make up here, we're going to upset someone. We're not going to make everyone happy. But at the end of the day, we have what's right for our district, our students, and our staff. So I just want to thank everyone for working with us, and we just need to go together. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. All right. I do not believe we have a need for executive session this evening. So hearing none, we shall move to entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Motion on the floor properly seconded. Any questions or discussion on the motion for adjournment? Hearing none, move to a roll call vote. Mrs. McCloskey? Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes.
Mrs. Starkey? Chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Again, thank you for everything that you all are doing for our children and our students on a regular basis. We stand adjourned at 8:13 p.m. Our next meeting is Tuesday, October 8th. Please stay safe and healthy. Thursday, October 8th.